operations in Lebanon, both in terms of targeting missile launchers and rocket launchers, targeting terrorists, including senior officials in Hezbollah. It's getting lonely at the top for Nasrallah. And in terms of course, that amazing, yeah, we can't stop talking about how amazing that pager operation was, which we still, we're going to talk about some more about the reaction around the world to it. But yeah, any decent human being will applaud Israel for doing that. But is it enough? And I think the answer to is what has already been done up until now enough is clearly no, because Israel is being bombarded daily with rockets, missiles, drones from Lebanon. Hezbollah has not been defeated, so it's certainly not enough so far. And the question on will Israel do what is enough is one that is yet to be answered, I guess. Now, when we look at Gaza, it's been a year and not enough has been done. And when we look at Lebanon, it should have been a year since Israel started doing what it's been doing in the past couple of days, and not well. It's insufficient as of yet, but again, we're going to be hopeful as always. As I always say, I hope I'm wrong, and let's see if I am. Welcome to the reality show. I'm joined by Marco, Richard, and first-time panelist Alex. Welcome, Alex. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, actually, you know what, Razi, I have to say, I think if we compare both wars, the Gaza war and the Lebanon war, I think the Lebanon war is sort of what we see when Israel has had 10 years to practice and plan something. I mean, just if you compare the way that this is being executed, it's very comforting in one sense. Of course, it's not enough, but it also kind of sheds a little bit of light on how unprepared, perhaps, the IDF really was to fight a war in Gaza, which, is kind of incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it does raise the question, does Israel believe, its own rhetoric and the rhetoric of its so-called allies when it comes to who the Palestinian people are? Because otherwise, what possible reason would you have to not be prepared for the war that, some of us at least knew was coming? Marco.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the way the retaliation after October 7 was done in Gaza kind of makes you wonder whether they prepared at all this kind of assault. It makes you wonder whether Israel was actually ready to face to Hezbollah, because Hezbollah is a much more organized and very well prepared and supplied army. It is a proper army, which is openly backed by Iran, by the way. While probably they were a bit not considering Hamas much of a threat, basically because they are a bit of a rat bag. They probably assumed they were more interested in gaining power and rather than doing an open attack on Israel. Even they, to be honest, seemed surprised that October 7 was actually so successful in a negative way, of course. So yeah, I think Israel was prepared for a bigger, more dangerous, more prepared enemy. Certainly not prepared for Gaza, although the response would be the same, i.e. flatten the places.
And of course, they've called this Operation Arrows of the North. I think Israel does have the best operation naming team of any country. And but of course, they've had good names before for Operation Grapes of Wrath, for example, back in 1996, which had pretty much the same ambitions that this one has, to push Hezbollah back in the north of the Litani River and to create that buffer zone and to delay things for as many years as possible. And of course, in 2006, with the July war, again, the goal was pretty much the same. So you've got this regular pattern of more or less every 18, 20 years, you're back in the same boat, and that will be repeated again if it's not as thorough as it should be. I think one person we've been hearing from lots of people, but one of those that we've been hearing from, who I'm glad to say I'm always on the opposite side of, is the Iranian president. And he said we should not allow Lebanon to become another Gaza. Well, I'm glad to say that's exactly what we should allow right now. And the day that I agree with him is probably the day that I'm thrown off the top of a building.
I don't know if I agree that we should praise Israel for naming operations after books. Like that's not original. If I have an idea for, you know, treating the Palestinians, you know, like the Allies treated the Germans and the Japanese, and I call it Operation The Ominous Parallels. I don't think I can't take credit for that. But the people who can take credit are the super chatters. Thank you, Jeff, for the super chat. Thank you, Alexis, for the super chat. Alexis says, a welcoming super chat for Alex. Way to go. And thank you, Bull Moose, for the super chat. Bull Moose says, in Dr. Evil's voice, I'm afraid the super chat price for me to try to do Dr. Evil's voice is in the 3 figures. But how about Leba no more? Yeah, all right. And for the people in the chat, you know, this is 2024. Please don't assume the gender of any of our panelists. Reading the discussion and yeah. Anyway, yeah. So you know, even with an operation, as I mentioned, like the pager operation, the most targeted operation in history, targeted at only combatants in such a manner when they are among the population. Israel still gets condemned and still by people who you think would know better. Alex, you have I think an example of that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody just seems to be continually saying to Israel, you know, like the Americans repeating, Lebanon's been put back now. Hezbollah's been put back now 20 years. It's almost like, you know, it's enough. It's enough. You know, you don't need to continue the war. Please stop. Please stop. So all of these kind of false allies who seem to have so many criticisms of probably one of the best, you know, the best executed, you know, responses to terrorism maybe ever. And it's all they seem to do is want to just continually say that Israel is, you know, this is terrorism, it's committing a genocide, etc. It's actually extremely boring at this point. I really wish they would change the record, at least say something original.
Yeah, and this was what the former head of the CIA, right? Leon Panetta.
That was a yeah.
I mean, this is the CIA's job basically to deal with terrorists, and if they think that eliminating the top officials in a terrorist organization is terrorism, yeah, Americans who think, you know, this is, why should we be interested? This is not our war. Yeah, listen to the people who are supposed to defend you. Remember, there were terrorist attacks against America. There will be more, and what will guarantee that there will be more and that they will be successful by the terrorist standards is a policy of thinking that killing terrorists is terrorism.
It's even, you know, Razi, I wanted to say as well, is like the Americans keep repeating to us this sort of mantra of, you know, there's no point in killing the upper echelons of Hezbollah because they're just going to replace them. And, you know, they know very well that it's incredibly important because Arab armies are not like other armies in the sense that they're notorious for, you know, kind of husbanding information. They don't pass information down to their subordinates. So when you lose somebody like the head of the Radwan force who's had a lot of experience militarily, you are losing a tremendous amount. It is not like losing a major or a lieutenant colonel in the US Army. It absolutely is not. You know, you typically in the structure of terrorist organizations, especially in the structure of Arab armies, they don't pass information down to the subordinates because they're frightened of the subordinates. If they tell them everything they know, they lose their sense of importance. So, you know, I absolutely detest that kind of rhetoric that's going around. you don't need to kill them because they're just going to get more. It's kind of it's extremely insulting, actually. Do people think the Israeli people are that dumb?
Yeah, and we know that you know, the Nukhba fighters on October 7th found out, many of them found out that morning where they're going and what their orders are. And yeah, in the case of the Radwan force, I think I think Ibrahim Akil only shared it with like 14 of his top commanders. So that information may have been eliminated as he was during that meeting with his 14 top commanders. Um, had something else to say, forgot what it was. Marco.
Well, you can only hope that the people in that room were the only ones who knew about it and had the ability to organize something like that. But of course, the biggest tragedy here happening in the West is that, as you mentioned earlier on, the former CIA guy sees, not hitting an enemy of the West and not getting rid of them. They don't see it as they see it as a victory. They effectively roll out the Kissinger style of diplomacy, which means, just do a bit, just to be seen like you've done something, but don't go too far because it might be dangerous and blah blah blah. Effectively, it's the same kind of line that Nasrallah used immediately after, when he had the speech after the pager attack, and it's kind of what what's his name, Peshenski, whatever, the new Iranian president is doing. He's trying to make it look like, oh, we don't want escalation in the region. Oh, we are seeking peace. We are, yeah, right. And at the same time, he says that effectively the Hezbollah is the only structure in place to help the Palestinian. He said something like, if Hezbollah is doing the minimum by throwing rockets into Israel, because otherwise who would help the Palestinians? I mean, this kind of attitude. On one side, they tell you we want peace. On the other, actually, we want to destroy Israel because that's what we do. That's our MO. But, and again, the West not recognizing that getting rid of the enemies is the way to go, translates into Biden say taking a win. If Israel had taken the win at that point, they wouldn't have freed Noah Gaman and the other 3 hostages, for example. They wouldn't have gone into Rafah and destroyed the rest of the Al-Qassam. I mean, you cannot play with the rules of the enemy. You cannot let them get away with literally with murder. You cannot let them get away with October 7th. And of course, even if incredibly on yesterday, Monday, wasn't it? Yeah, Israel hit 1,600 locations within Lebanon by getting rid of rockets, depot ammo, and all this kind of stuff. Today, Hezbollah still threw 270, nearly 300 rockets into Israel in one day. So it goes to show how 1,600 sites destroyed is actually nothing compared to the extent that Hezbollah is embedded into Lebanon. And we're not just talking the area which should be demilitarized. So, and that's why even Beirut has got a famous quarter, Daye, which is a quarter known to be occupied by Hezbollah leaders, so and people associated with it. Hezbollah is even in parliament nowadays in Lebanon. It's such a disgraceful, failed state that even has an Hezbollah component in the parliament. I mean,
that's why it's so nice to see the Israelis degrading the communications network within Hezbollah. Because, I mean, back in 2008, during the Beirut clashes, that's what the Lebanese government tried to do at the time. And of course, that involved a load of clashes on the streets, and eventually they had to backtrack from it. So now at least Israel is actually achieving some of that goal that benefits everyone in the region. I think what's depressing about this is you're hearing a lot of the same language from both your allies and your enemies when it comes to this vague floating terms of de-escalation and restraint and stepping back from the brink and peace and stability and room for diplomacy. All of these floating disembodied terms, which basically mean capitulate, give up, step back. Don't tackle the threat of these rockets firing over the border and protecting Israel from them. That's what's being called upon. I think to Alex's point about the network of and striking the leadership within Hezbollah, and of course the fact they don't pass information on is also the paranoia that exists for is it an Israeli spy? Is it part of the infiltrated, compromised network that allowed the pager attacks to happen in the first place? So who can you trust within your own network to pass the information on? So keeping it tight to hand is obviously one of the paranoid ways in which they do that. And of course, as they're gradually seeing on charts and things that we've seen in lots of visuals all over the place, people showing as it being eliminated, including, is it today, Ibrahim Babisi, the head of the missile systems section in Hezbollah, a senior Hezbollah commander was taken out, and they came very close the other day to Ali Karaki, the head of the southern border area. So they're knocking them off one by one. They're not as easily replaced, and certainly the morale effect of that is quite substantial, particularly when each one is going to be paranoid about what they've got in their pocket and what's coming out the air above their heads.
Yeah, we talked a few days ago about society, Muslim society generally is already very, very paranoid, and they already believe that the trees and the rocks will talk to them and tell them when a Jew is hiding behind them. But there's all these stories about Israel planting the one type of tree that can't talk. And now, Nasrallah already told them, the phone in your pocket is a Mossad agent, and now the pagers in their pockets are exploding. And yeah, so I'm sure, I don't know if they can use paper because, paper is made of trees, and maybe those trees are Jewish trees. But anyway, that's kind of one of the fun things about it. Thank you all for the super chat to super sticker of a bacon cheeseburger, which we will send to Nasrallah. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, "Hi, Razi. Lebanon needs to be Druze and Christian nation only." I don't care what Lebanon is, as long as it doesn't, as long as it stays in Lebanon. I care in the sense that I would like all countries to be free, capitalist countries, but I'm not that optimistic for that happening anytime soon. I think Lebanon could be made into a country that at least isn't attacking Israel. That's what we can hope for in the near future. Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says, hostage families should sue the UN. Is that gonna be successful? I don't know. What I would like to see done with the UN is for free countries to leave it and let the other countries, see how it works without the sanction of the victim. And thank you, Bull Moose, for the super chat. Bull Moose says, "I think you mean kiss ass jerk." Whenever there's a super chat by Bull Moose and it goes through, I'm like, okay, it's probably something I can read. Whenever Bull Moose sends a super chat and says, "I emailed you the super chat because I can't send it through," I'm always worried. But yeah, Alex.
Yeah, it's so I've really wanted to kind of dispel this nonsense that's been going around about the reasons that Hezbollah is actually involved in this war, at all. You kind of hear this thing being repeated on social media. Hezbollah are only getting involved because the Palestinians are hurting, and so the Shiites think that the Palestinians are desert rats and lizard eaters. There's nothing that they detest more. Maybe they detest you slightly more, but the idea that there's some kind of, kinship, brotherhood here, it's complete nonsense. It's really just kind of any excuse. And further on to your point, Razi, about the paranoia. I was listening to some reports that Israel is apparently responsible for putting hormones in the water and turning girls against their husbands, putting hormones so that they would no longer want to reproduce babies with their husbands. And I also heard another very interesting one as well. And I think that was the snakes, that Israel had trained snakes to relay messages back and forth from Gaza. So we're an unbelievably diverse intelligence gathering people, according to the enemy.
And Bulmus says, when have I ever sent something you can't read publicly? Yeah, I think I read it publicly, but you did have to send something by email a couple of days ago. But we can blame YouTube for that rather than you, Marco.
Yeah, so somebody mentioned the UN. There is currently a jamboree going on in New York. Is the UN General Assemblies, and Biden and all the other head of state are there. And during this occasion, our favorite dictators in the world, like China, for example, have decided to point out that they support Hezbollah, just in case you didn't think China is an evil place, and dictatorship, communist or whatever nature that is, whether it's Islamist or communist, is still a dictatorship, and they just want the destruction of the West. So they decided to support Hezbollah openly. And again, there was this speech from Pezeshkian, the new Iranian president, yeah. And he was quite open about the fact that Iran will support Hezbollah, whatever happens. And at the same time, he's trying to come across as the moderate guy. He seems to have made a sort of name for himself, the moderate guy in Iran. Well, we know perfectly well that he went through the clearance from the Khamenei and all the other clerics which ruled the Islamic Republic of Iran. So he's going to go down the route of trying to appease the West and make it look like he's collaborating and trying and get the nuclear deal in place and keep at the same time funding Hezbollah by the usual routes. But one of the things that really made me laugh was when he talked about the Houthis. He says something like, well, we can't stop them from reacting to the crime that Israel is doing. It's like, really? You can't stop them because you haven't control over them? No, because if you really wanted to stop them, first of all, you will flatten them because Iranians don't really care about human rights in the first place. But also they will stop supplying weapons. So as usual, we see a bunch of people getting together in New York who agree on only one thing, that the fact that Israel is there is just a quirk of history that should be corrected. So they all want together to pile up together against Israel and make clear that self-defense is not on the table.
And of course, Iran's also involved in all the propaganda side of it as well. I mean, they set up the Al-Manar TV station, didn't they, within Lebanon, which has a penchant for pretending that the Holocaust never existed, among its other load of nonsense that it tends to broadcast. So that gives you a pretty good idea. So I guess who should you listen to in the course of this, apart from obviously us four? Well, one of the people I came across who had a pretty good take on this was a former retired colonel. Her name was Miri Eisen. She's the International Institute for Counterterrorism, and she was talking about the response here, and she said this, best to use her own words for this, I think she says it clearly enough. She says, quote, "The language Hezbollah speak is a language of violence and power, and that means actions are very important against them. I wish it was different, but I have not seen any other language that works." And this is the point here. This is the point that, you've got all sorts of people talking different language. You've got all of the West talking the language of humanitarianism, for example. You've got Israel is obviously concerned about its security, which is, vital here. But the only language that Hezbollah understand is the kind of violent language which they propagate. And therefore, the only way to really drive the message home is to eliminate them one at a time, and to degrade their ability to fire rockets, and to essentially weaken them right at the source until they give up.
Should I address the troll in the chat? Okay, I'll leave it for later, but this is a new type of troll. Somebody who comes at it from a perspective of anti-Israel Jews. Anyway, we'll leave that for later. Yeah, one thing that was said in the UN General Assembly, Biden spoke there. He said released the hostages. Of course, as at least to his credit, he said hostages, not sausages. That's more of a Biden thing, you would think, than a Keir Starmer thing. But Keir Starmer is finding his footing in his new role. But he also called for a ceasefire, which is, again, very much not along the same lines of what the U.S. pretended to be immediately after October 7th.
And of course, it batted on about, again, the two-state solution malarkey. So.
Yeah, which again, as Alex mentioned, like this is maybe you mentioned it actually in the production meeting, but this was the idea of a two-state solution, especially now. Anybody who mentions it now is rewarding terrorism. Something else you mentioned was this idea of, do we kill this person because somebody else is gonna replace them? Like, I remember this from my younger days living in Israel, and this was the conversation around Yasser Arafat in the Second Intifada. Why should we kill him? Somebody worse will come along. And a couple days ago, I stayed up late and I was watching Israeli television in the middle of the night, as people do when they stay up late. And there was a sort of documentary about Nasrallah. And I'm forgetting the name of the person who was before him, but the whole conversation was, you killed the guy before him without thinking about who's going to come next. And then Nasrallah came, and he's supposedly much worse. That is really a very defeatist attitude. It is very possible that you killed a leader and somebody worse comes along. Do you have like a kind of a cap on how many terrible terrorist leaders you can kill? Because that seems to be the idea. By the way, that seems to be kind of something Israel is going against these last few days, because we do every day in the last few days talk about a new Hezbollah top commander that Israel has killed. They time it very well, by the way, with our shows being a few hours later, so we get the information on time. But yeah, that has been the idea historically.
Yeah, but it's not even like that. Killing the commanders is an absolutely legitimate, imperative military objective. It's not like you're killing a random moron with an RPG that's standing at the side of the road. Yeah, he can be replaced. You should kill him, but he's not important. But killing the upper echelons, you're destroying all of their knowledge. These were the guys that were in Syria. They are the ones that actually understand, the tactical application. They're the ones that understand how potentially to try to invade the Israelis. I mean, it angers me so much to hear that ridiculous argument made over and over and over again. I find it's so obnoxious.
Yeah, I agree. Marco.
Yeah, I think killing the random moron is a good thing to do. Killing the people at the top is a very good thing to do. And generally, killing terrorists is always a very, very good policy to follow. And certainly, not looking back, not apologizing for it, and not letting your so-called allies to stop you from doing so. And that's a lesson we should have implemented after 9/11. And other events before that and after that, we should have just gone and done that. Unfortunately, as usual, we go for take the win. We go for reduce the victims, reduce the collateral damage. Well, again, if you hide your weapons, you stash your weapon, you throw missiles, and we're not talking like fireworks. We're talking proper massive cruise missiles into Israel. Then if your neighbor does that and you don't either stop them or move away from it, then you deserve to be flattened with them. And even on a misfire would be even better, so you don't even go into Israel with your stuff. That's ultimately it's always a good thing to get rid of the bodies and let them replace with somebody else. We'll deal with whoever comes next.
I think Netanyahu himself said quite a few good words on this point, but certainly particularly where rockets and stuff are held within civilian areas. Obviously, the same playbook that we see within the Gaza Strip itself. He encouraged, said encouraged the Lebanese to rid themselves of Nasrallah's grip. But he said, quote, anyone who has a missile in their living room and a rocket in their garage will not have a home. And that's as blunt as you need to put it, isn't it? Because there's this pretense that a home is just a home, regardless of who lives in it, even if they are a terrorist or have weaponry or munitions or are using it as a base to fire at Israel. So you know, all of that is highly relevant here. I think what's interesting about what you're seeing on demonstration here is the precision targeting of Israel compared with the blunt, indiscriminate targeting of Hezbollah, for example, who simply fire out into Israel and don't really care where it lands. Whereas you know, the fact that Israel can take out individual terrorists with that kind of precision is a demonstration of their own capability, as well as their own intelligence gathering as well. And all of that has a big deterrent effect. And each leader that you take out within Hezbollah sets back the whole operation, sets back the whole planning. You know, it has a bigger impact than just the removal of that terrorist. It disrupts the network of communication together with the communication devices themselves, and together that degrades the enemy's capability to fight and to launch an attack, and of course gives you a window in which to make proper progress against ensuring that no such further attack can occur.
Yeah, and it also, this is why it's also so important that that Israel, once it has done what it has done in the past week with the pagers and the walkie-talkies and killing all these senior commanders, it doesn't stop. Like, it doesn't let any outside pressure about de-escalation stop it, because you know, maybe the US is right, maybe Israel has set Hezbollah 20 years back, but that's not far enough back. That's a step in the direction of how far back they should be set back. So yeah, let's hope Israel doesn't stop. Thank you, Bull Moose, for the super chat. Bull Moose says, those who choose savagery as a way of life will never be swayed by words. I agree, but then Bull Moose in a regular comment says, two-state solution, which may actually sway, you know, I think this is, if you look at the kind of state that they want, and if you could look at the kind of de facto states that they run in Gaza and in the West Bank, they're pretty shitty. So maybe that will sway them. And yeah, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, why are the Americans and everybody else trying to rebuild the Palestinians in their image? You know, they're trying to rebuild them in this idea that all they want is a two-state solution. That's what they want. Well, you know, you need to actually listen to what they're saying. Who on earth in Ramallah is talking about wanting a two-state solution? It's like, you know, they're not interested in that. And if they were, it's just a stepping stone to complete annihilation. Yeah. And more kind of to your point there, about kind of the attitudes that's been going on about the war in the north, basically. So I followed this very, very interesting think tank called Alma Center, and it's all about Major Sarit Zahavi, who lives on the Lebanese border, the Israeli side of it. And for I think about 10 years now, every single day, she's been writing reports about everything that she's seeing, all of the various capabilities. And Razi, you know, I after the pager attack, it became extremely clear to me that the Israelis are no longer communicating their major operations to the Americans. So it kind of shows to me as well this huge distrust which currently exists, because generally before a big operation like that, they would always be sharing intelligence with the Americans, and they really, really appeared as if they didn't. And more on to the pinpoint precision strikes. Part of me also wonders if that is a necessity that they're taking this tactic, because they don't have enough ammunition to really do what they, you know, to do something more indiscriminate. If you even look in Gaza, they're physically going to the buildings, the soldiers, strapping on dynamite and, you know, blowing it up the old-fashioned way, because they simply don't have you know, the munitions to do it from the sky. So part of me is also kind of wondering if that's playing a part in their overall strategy.
It could be, yeah, and that's incredibly dangerous, and soldiers are putting their lives at risk, and shouldn't be, because again, like these buildings could be taken from the air, and there could be terrorists hiding there, or they could be booby trapped. And yeah, in terms of you know, Israel distrusting America, the Biden administration has earned that distrust very, very well over the past year, even before that, but this past year has really been exceptional in that sense. Marco.
Yeah, well, yeah, perhaps they should start paging the US before they do something like that, and see if you know, something happens. I think partially they might well take advantage of the vacuum that is in Washington right now, because we know that Biden was never there in the first place, but especially now who's not even the guy who's going to stand. People are not even looking at him. If he weren't that they took him out of the fridge this morning just to go to the UN and have his speech, probably you would haven't heard from him since he's been removed from the race. And also, I think Israel wants to be careful about hitting Lebanon as such, because Lebanon, like Iraq, has a massive internal opposition to the government, to Hezbollah or to Islamic State, because especially Lebanon, you know, they had a civil war between Christians and Muslims until, well, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So they are probably careful not try to hit the population, not trying to cause a movement against Israel from the population itself, in case they need to put boots on the ground. If you were to do a ground offensive in Lebanon, probably you would need some kind of support from the people who are actually providing intelligence right now. I mean, Israel has shown that the intelligence that they have on the ground in Lebanon is actually quite impressive. And that suggests that probably some movement on the ground itself within Lebanon is providing information. That's too precious for Israel to risk for an indiscriminate attack. But you're right, Alex. It could well be the case that they try not to waste big stuff on small targets, really.
Particularly when the ability to secure additional weaponry from across the globe isn't as easy for Israel as it is for Ukraine, because you know the amount of anti-Semitism there is in the world. So that's clearly at play there. I think also demonstrating the ability to target precisely and not including the Americans and stuff, it is also demonstrating to the Americans what Israel is capable of, and that Israel is you know, properly intent on defending itself. And although we would like it to have shown more determination and resourcefulness and less listening to the international community, you know, months and months and months ago, at least it is stepping up now and showing that we aren't going to kowtow to the pressure that the US, etc., is putting on us. And these are the kind of innovative manner in which we're going to ensure that, you know, Israel stands a chance, quite frankly. And of course, a lot of the suggestions that keep coming up about what the future will hold for different areas include a bunch of stuff that's been utterly debunked by reality and experience up until now. I mean, look at UNIFIL as one such example. You know, the UN border force supposed to keep peace in the very region we're talking about that's never managed to do it for decades. And of course, you know, the fact that Hezbollah was supposed to disarm as part of a UN resolution. And of course, you know, always hearing about UN resolutions against Israel, but never the fact that Hezbollah violates them, you know, every day of the week.
Yeah. Thank you, Bullmoose, for another super chat. Bullmoose says Israel is Gimli at the top of the garrison, and HMS and Hezbollah are Hamas. Hezbollah are the orcs climbing up the ladder. Yeah, this is one of those super chats where you know, Alejandro could probably understand, but I'm sure many of our viewers do, and if our my co-panelists do, they will comment. Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says Palestinians to Jordan, there's your two-state solution. I'm not against that. I definitely don't think, if Israel did militarily what it needs to do in Gaza and in the West Bank, part of what happens after that is that the people who are still there, probably many of them would have to leave. And thank you, Mary, for the super chat. Do we have? Were we going to play any videos, Daniel? I think we were going to play a video of a another random home. We played a video yesterday, right, of just another nice family house in Lebanon. We can play this. This, I think, is it without sound? So yeah, let's play it. If it's without sound, we can talk over it. Yeah, looks like a nice house, wouldn't want to live, like this in isolation. And yeah, look, there's many rooms. So you have the more rooms you have, the more stuff you have in different rooms. That's a cruise missile, by the way. That's in Hebrew. So for people who can't read Hebrew, that's what it is. It's not some art piece. And yeah, something's coming off the side of the building there. The cruise missile is ready to launch. Unfortunately, oh, that's a terrorist right there. Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't exactly turn out as planned, but yeah, the house had a little accident. But yeah, this is this kind of tells you when you hear the official. I don't know what the last official number was, something like 500 people dead in Lebanon. Could very well be that it's random people who happened to be in the area. That particular house was in the middle of nowhere, but they're not all in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, if that is the case, then that is the fault of the terrorists planning to. I don't know how. Look, I don't know how people got away in their own mind with saying that there was anything wrong with the pager attack. But I'm sure those people would say there's something wrong with targeting a house with a cruise missile aimed at you.
Yeah, but
Alex.
Razzie, where are you going to put your cruise missile? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, you're not maybe in London you might be able to rent out some kind of car park or something, but Lebanon, you just don't have the space. And so something I've been noticing as well, and I'm sure everybody else has been noticing it, after the kind of success of October 7th for Hamas, now you have all of the other creeps, all of the other terrorist organizations like the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, which is of course the Fatah version of Hamas. They now have to be concerned about their recruitment, because now they're not looking like the big tough guys that are standing up to big bad Israel. So you're seeing a massive surge in all of these other losers and lunatics, be it the Shia militias in Iraq, or be that, Hezbollah, or be that the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, or, any of the other freaks that you see. So we've definitely seen quite a bit of activity that we haven't seen quite a long time, including the so-called Palestinian police force taking part in moonlighting essentially as terrorists. A very interesting report came out by an NGO called Regavim. I really recommend actually visiting their website and seeing some of their reports. Imagine if the cops in New York, you found out that they were moonlighting as bomb makers and summary executioners and pimps. I mean, it's utterly ludicrous. Funded by you guys, the nice good people of Europe and the US. Thank you for that.
Yeah, the Palestinian police force was, of course, formed after, according to the Oslo Accords. This was the force that was gonna keep the peace, make sure that no terrorism comes out of Palestinian-controlled areas. And yeah, you mentioned Iraq. There have been several incidents just in the past week of, I believe it was just drones in every case, fired from Iraq to Israel. So yeah, I'm sure if Israel decides to do something about that, it will be called an Israeli attack on Iraq. But yeah, that's where Israel is, and that's what it's surrounded by. Marco.
Yeah, going back to the video, that missile we saw was actually a cruise missile adapted from a Tupolev Russian missile. It's got a range of 200 kilometers and it carries 300 kilograms of explosive. So we are not talking, again, fireworks. We're not talking small stuff. It's a proper, I mean, 300 kilometers, what gets to the other side of Israel. Israel is not a very big country. And if you see where it is, I mean, this is kind of, when we say these people are evil, we're not really mincing our words. We're not really making it up. This is the kind of evil that you would see in a James Bond film where you got the missile under your lounge. I mean, the guy goes out, opens the side of the house and throws the missile in order to kill Jews. That's the only reason why the missile is there. It's not there for self-defense. He's not a libertarian who justifies killing people just for stepping into their property, but he's there just to kill civilians and Jews and destroy Israel. So this kind of level of, imagine the kind of money and effort and logistics that went into building the house, putting the missile in it, and making sure it would run and work. Thankfully, the IDF is a bit brighter than that, and they're able to detect these things and get rid of them. But there are thousands of them, hundreds of them. So, you know, until you deal with all the sites in Lebanon, either by destroying them or getting some sort of support within that gets rid of them, how do you expect Israel to be able to defend its own people? How do you expect people in Israel to live a civilized life, a life that human beings should live, not being at a constant threat to be annihilated by this bunch of Islamic medieval buffoons?
I just wanted to pick up off the back of what Alex, you were saying about moonlighting and the PLO, etc. Just because to me that helps to blow apart the argument that Hezbollah is a state within a state, as if it's some sort of entirely separate entity that has no connection with the people or the country or the government around it, in the way that you're also expected to believe that, you know, Hamas is somehow separate from the Palestinians and that they're two entirely distinct things, and one can be targeted without targeting the other, and one doesn't facilitate the other, as is clearly the case. So absolutely, that's relevant. And certainly when it comes to the propaganda side of it, of course, you're already seeing the kind of footage which shows people being taken to hospitals and the state of hospital care and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that needs to be understood is the state of those hospitals even prior to you know, in the last few years, that the state of Lebanon itself as a country has been on its knees through its own economic mismanagement. You know, its own currency is you know, degraded by like 95%, the lira. You know, its central banks has been in serious trouble. There's been hyperinflation that's been causing you know, gas and food and fuel, etc., to go through the roof by hundreds of percent. Not the kind of inflation that we're experiencing across the world, but really the kind that is the sign of a failed state, to be honest. So when you're shown pictures of hospitals where medics have already fled the country for work elsewhere, where equipment and medicine obviously isn't in supply because the country has failed, and it's failed because of its own actions. So there's no sympathy coming from me on that line, but it's just, don't be suckered into believing that it's you know, Israeli evil that's caused this, and that you know, the same method that's used in Gaza, frankly.
You know, the troll, I was wondering if I should mention. So first of all, she said at some point, I'm being censored, which I always, the messages that say I'm being censored, I always wonder if the people see kind of the conflict in, you know, but anyway, Yeah, never mind. This is not what censorship means. You know, we don't owe you a platform. YouTube doesn't owe us or you a platform, and yet your messages are going through enough for me to see that you're also a 9/11 conspiracy theorist. Not a surprise when somebody is anti-Israel. The road from there to the Jews are, to blame for everything. It's not a very long
Is there
trip.
Candace in the chat?
This is this is Jewish Candace. Yeah, we have those as well. Parting thoughts, and where can people find more from you, Alex?
I'm just going to remain a little bit of a mystery for now. I don't actually have that much social media, but hopefully I'd really love to come here and see everybody again. So I suppose I really would love to recommend everybody to visit Regavim and also visit the Alma Center as well and take a look, because these are two really amazing resources about what's actually going on in Israel.
Marco, Richard, parting thoughts, and where can people find you?
We are on the Briefly Objective, which is the sister channel to this one. You can find very short content, 2 minutes or even shorter, under a minute for the shorts. And we are on the Substack, the ARCUK Substack.
With various articles, and more to come in the future. And as closing thoughts, what can you say other than let's hope this is the start of something, not the end of it. Let's hope we're seeing, it's a good start, but only if there is more to come. Otherwise, it's simply insufficient. But time will tell, and I'm hopeful that this opportunity will be taken by Israel and by Netanyahu to ensure that at least Hezbollah is pushed back and degraded to the extent that will buy more than the standard amount of time between these conflicts, as we've seen through too often in the past.
I'm Razi Ginsburg on X. By the way, the Ayn Rand Center UK Instagram account has been one of the videos from a couple of days ago with Jonathan has been getting seen by all sorts of anti-Israel people, and I'm getting notifications of some pretty nasty comments. So if anybody wants to go over there and it definitely, even the negative comments help with the algorithm. We encourage not just the negative comments, but yeah, that's interesting stuff going on there. Interesting stuff also going on in the Atlas Shrugged Book Club, which starts in 5 minutes for Ayn Rand Center UK members, YouTube members, and we will be back tomorrow with the Daily Objective and the reality show. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.